Awakens is a fantastic first step back into the Star Wars universe. It lives and breathes in the tradition of the original trilogy. It honors the classics, story-wise, stylistically, even with its cinematography, while still updating it in a fantastic tone for a new generation of Star Wars fans. Elements of both the old and the new are merged in a kind of torch-passing ritual. My absolute favorite way they did this is when Rey and Finn are flying the Millennium Falcon. Because it showed us the Falcon through the eyes of the next generation as being old and outdated, you know, like a piece of 70s technology in today's world, while showing us the entire time that it's still the best ship in the galaxy. I love the new cast of characters. I do. They're fantastic, they're so much fun, they're so funny and snarky, and they always have a quip. I love to watch them interact. It's just, they're so much fun together. Not only that, these new characters are essentially an embodiment of our current generation. Just look at them! The way they talk, the way they react, the way Finn fantastically fanboys, and his awkward moments, and the way he gets all up into Phasma's face. I'm in charge now. That's us. That's our generation. You wouldn't see Han or Luke or Leia doing that. But you could see yourself doing it, couldn't you? And I love it! So humor and snark and quips. I will love any character that does that. But what I'm really, really looking forward to with these guys is actually watching them develop. We didn't see a whole lot of this in this first film, and I think that's okay, so long as they give it to us later on down the road. Because I want to see these characters grow and develop in their own right. I loved having the original cast in this film. I loved that they had such prominent roles because I was afraid they would just be cameos to draw in a bigger audience. But they weren't. They had prominent roles, and I loved that. I want to see them keep having these prominent roles in the future movies, but I want to see our new characters. I want to see how they deal with things in their own right. I want to see how they react to things and how they develop, without the original cast holding their hands, so to speak. I want to see what they can do on their own. Thank you. Thank you, J.J. Abrams, because the lack of excessive CGI in this film was a heaven sent. I loved the feel and the look of the universe again. It was so natural, so original, and so beautifully freaking authentic that I loved it, and Star Wars is alive and well, and we are back in action. So on the whole, overall, I think The Force Awakens is a great new extension to the Star Wars universe and a great first step for a new franchise. And if anyone dares call J.J. Abrams Jar Jar, I will tase you. Nostalgia versus ripoff. Everyone has seen the argument that's taken the internet by storm the last couple of weeks. I am in the nostalgia camp. I don't feel like 7 was a ripoff, more of a way of reconnecting us with the classic Star Wars that we know and love, while at the same time setting us up with a new set of characters and journeys for the next adventure. I think it was a smart move, both for the storytelling and in business sense. It essentially assured success for the film, and at the same time it did a beautiful job of passing off the torch to the next generation, and they did that so well. Having said that, they will need to give us something new and different in episode 8. Otherwise, there will be no redeeming it. The only reason they got away with the nostalgia trip in episode 7 is because it's been 32 years. This was the reintroduction, the icebreaker after a very long break in a relationship. This was the reassurance that this time, things will be different. Now that they've done that, a retread of Empire would be lazy, and I really don't think they're stupid enough to do that. Do you hear that, minds behind Star Wars? I am putting my faith in you. Do not fail me. So I've only read a handful of novels in the extended universe to date, but I have to admit, even I was a little miffed when I found out that they were going to dismiss them from the canon of Star Wars. After all, it was filled with over 30 years of expansion and development and world building and mythos. Why would you get rid of that? Why? I think now I understand. There are so many stories and so much expectation tied up with the extended universe. I think they wanted to give themselves room to breathe. They wanted the freedom to create a new story without the restrictions of an already firmly established universe. I can understand that. Now, one could say this is a bad thing. On the other hand, would we really have been satisfied with a simple book-to-movie adaptation of a story that already existed in the universe? Readers and fans in general aren't really known for their acceptance regarding movie adaptations. And somewhere, deep down in our fanboy hearts, we know that it would have just been anticlimactic. I mean, who wants to sit through a brand new Star Wars movie and already know everything that's gonna happen? Would you have been satisfied with that? The way I see it, they didn't necessarily want to dismiss the entire extended universe out of the canon. There are obviously pieces and stories that they wanted to keep, but they wanted to tell their own story at the same time. So they seem to be creating a patchwork of new story and new characters while still honoring the extended universe at the same time. Obviously, I had very strong feelings on whether or not Han and Leia were going to be a couple in episode 7. I've already received a few consolatory messages on this front because, let's face it, they weren't exactly together. But I am okay with this. Why? Because Han and Leia were together. My biggest fear was that Han and Leia would not have happened. Period. And that would be unacceptable because it's so deeply ingrained into our minds, into our culture, into Star Wars. Han and Leia are one of the prime OTPs, everyone's favorite fictional couple, okay, at least in their top 10. You can't erase that. You can't. And they didn't. Han and Leia did happen. They were together, they were happy, even if they drove each other crazy. They had at least one child, they continued their fight against the Empire side by side, they were parents together, and they probably would have had a happily ever after, albeit with giant space battles and epic space adventures, if it hadn't been for their son turning to the dark side. Even though, in episode 7, Han and Leia were not technically a couple, they were still in love. They were still each other's one and only. There was even still hope, I think, that they would be together again. And this all boils down to one very important thing. Han and Leia are still and will forever be a thing. And now, there's no changing that. Yay! Honest with you. There is still a part of me, however small, that refuses to believe that Han Solo is actually dead. That was my biggest fear going into the movie. The entire week leading up to the movie, I had been trying not to think about the very likely possibility. Deep down, I knew it would happen. Deep down, I knew, but I still was not prepared for it. I still wasn't convinced until the credits actually rolled that he wasn't just gonna pop back up somewhere. I was holding out for it. Far, far longer than I should have. The base exploded, he was stabbed with a lightsaber, he fell into a great, great depth, and still, I was thinking, he can come back from that. They can work around it. They can totally do that. I wasn't ready to say goodbye. There's still a spark of hope in me, born, I'm certain, of pure, stubborn denial. I know that he's gone, and that he's not coming back. And I'm glad that they're not going to pull some cheap trick to bring him back. The Force Awakens broke my heart. And I still loved it. I have a confession to make. I have never hated a villain before. I don't hate villains. Usually people have at least that one character that they just love to hate. That one villain they just want to strangle. I've never had that. For me, a villain is a necessary part of the story. They're despicable and evil, but they belong. Without them, what kind of story would it be? So I'm very lenient toward and accepting of most villains. I hate Kylo Ren. I hate him so much. I want him to die a painful, miserable, long, guilt-stricken death, fully realizing the horrific atrocity he has committed. I have never before hated any character with the passion and the fervor with which I hate him. I hate him. But I also don't want Han Solo's son to be irredeemable. I don't want to hate Han Solo's son. Which just makes me hate Kylo Ren even more. It makes me feel guilty because of how much I love Han Solo and because I can see how much Han Solo loves his son. I see the torture and the struggle in Ben. I see the boy that Han Solo must have seen. Trapped, tortured, lost. I want to pity him. I want to believe, like Han, that there is still good in him. And at the same time, I know that I will never, ever forgive him. Curse you, Kylo Ren, curse you! One thing. The more I think about it, the more I am of the opinion that they killed Han too soon. Don't get me wrong, I'm still not okay with it. I am still heartbroken. I still wish there was some way they could have worked around it. But I know that it's good for the story. I know that it's powerful for the story. The biggest reason I think this happened too soon is because of Rey. While she's kidnapped by Kylo Ren, he senses that she thinks of him as the father she never had. Why? While I appreciate the irony of this little scene, how realistic is this? She barely knows Han. Even thrust together during this crisis, they never had enough significant bonding time to account for that level of sentiment. They were leading up to it, sure, but what did they actually have? Han realizing that she knows her stuff and offering her a job. That's it. While significant for Rey, not exactly up there with father figure. The closest thing they had to a bonding moment was when they were flying the Falcon together, and I think that was more Rey attempting to bond with him and Han Solo thinking that she's some upstart kid. Granted, this could be because he was jealous that she could fly the Falcon better than he could, which, I have to admit, was kind of fantastic. Still, not exactly a heartfelt connection. There wasn't ever a decent opportunity for Rey to have developed that level of emotional attachment or sentimentality toward Han Solo. Period. It just wasn't there. And certainly not enough of one for her to be more affected by Han's death than Chewie. After their victory, after the Starkiller base has been blasted to smithereens, they are disembarking at the Resistance base. Everyone is cheering for their victory, and then the crowd parts, and you see Leia, and you know that she knows, but you know that she's still waiting there, hoping that against hope that somehow Han is going to come off of that ship. And Chewie went toward her, and I knew that he'd give her that look, and then they would hug, and they would mourn together, and then, wait, what are you doing? Chewie, what? Why did you just walk past Leia? You did not even glance at her. What are you doing, Chewie? He walked right past her. He didn't mourn with her. He didn't hug her. He didn't even look at her. It was Rey. Rey is the one who mourns with Leia over Han's death. Even accounting for this supposed deep sentimental connection that she's supposed to have had with Han, even taking into consideration that happened somewhere off screen, behind the scenes, you do realize that at this point in the story, Rey and Leia have never met? They haven't met yet. This is the first time that they have ever seen each other. They haven't spoken, ever, or seen each other, or anything. And Chewie walks right past Leia, and Rey is right there to comfort her. In what universe is this confirmation of Han's death okay? Seriously. What universe? None. I'm sorry, but Chewie should have gone straight to Leia. There is no way that Rey had sufficient development with any of the characters to make that confirmation of Han's death okay. No way. Should not have gone down that way. And I do have an issue about that. This is my big pet peeve. When I originally saw the movie, I saw it with a friend of mine. You guys remember the library ninja, right? He pointed out something crucial. There was no downtime in The Force Awakens. More specifically, there was no travel time. They jumped incredibly fast from planet to planet and system to system. Just think of Luke Skywalker practicing with the lightsaber and Han making fun of hokey religions and ancient weapons. Think of Chewie and R2 playing that virtual holograph chess. Of Han and Leia flirting while they try to fix the Falcon on an asteroid in the middle of nowhere. There was none of this in 7. Force Awakens was a fast-paced, action-packed blockbuster film. I understand that this is what people have come to expect from blockbuster films. I think this is part of the brilliant job that the crew did in updating the Star Wars franchise. They may have done too brilliant of a job. I almost wonder if they played 7 too much to general audiences and not enough to the Star Wars audience. The one true thing this film lacked, in my opinion, was character development, especially between Rey and Han. We were told they had a special attachment, but we were never actually shown it. I'm a writer. One of the first rules that is pounded into your head by every writing book, teacher, critique partner, and writer is show, don't tell. This was the egregious error that The Force Awakens made. I think it was a direct result of the movie being too fast-paced to play to general audiences' mind. We didn't get just a few slower moments. Step away from the escalating blockbuster action for some genuine and much-needed character interaction. While I think The Force Awakens is a great movie and a fantastic new step in the Star Wars franchise, I think it pandered just a little too much to general audiences and not enough to Star Wars audiences. I think this is one error that could hurt the longevity and appeal for Star Wars fans. Now for the glimmer of hope. My understanding is that there are almost 20 minutes of deleted scenes from this movie. I am crossing my fingers that at least one of these will contain a moment of this essential development between Rey and Han, and then all will be right with the world. I want to see more time taken to get to know the characters. For conversations, emotions, moments. Give them a little travel time for Pete's sake, because they are bouncing around an entire galaxy. Give me genuine connections with the characters, outside of the action and the drama. Give me those important little moments that endear us to them. Rey, Poe, and Finn are all fantastically fun characters. I want to see good character development for them, for us to see what they're like and how they deal with things without the burst of adrenaline. I want to understand them better. I also want explanations. How can Rey have such control of the Force when it's already been firmly established in the universe that it takes intensive training? I want an actual, solid, good, genuine answer for this and not a lot of hand-waving. So help me if that answer is the Force is strong with this one. I may revolt. I also really don't want Rey to be a Skywalker. I don't want her to be a Solo either. Please, please, please don't make Luke her father. Don't even make him her uncle. That's bordering on the cliché with this franchise. It really is. Phasma. Phasma needs to come back because there is no way that they played up her role that much for that! She has got to come back and she has got to do something significant. Maybe she's Rey's mother. Last and most important of all, I want to see originality. I want to see a story that does not borrow so heavily from those that came before it. I want 8 to take us in a new direction. I do not want a repeat of 5. Give me something new, daring, exciting. We've already discussed the nostalgia versus rip-off factor, and I really hope that they push boundaries with 8. I want to see them create their own elements and bring them into the universe. And that is what I want to see in episode 8. The final verdict? This movie exceeded my expectations. I was more inclined to believe that Disney would pull off something amazing rather than ruin the franchise, but the closer the day got, the more doubts started creeping in. I was beginning to have doubts, even to dread whether or not they would be able to produce not only an amazing film that I would enjoy, but an amazing next step in the Star Wars universe that I would love. Granted, it wasn't perfect. It had flaws. But the most important thing for me is this. I came away with a deeper love and a greater appreciation for the Star Wars universe and its characters. I am on such a Star Wars high right now, it's not even funny. And that should be all you need to know. So that is why I love this film, and why I will forgive its flaws, and why I'm very excited for the next one. So there it is. Me plus Star Wars in a nutshell. They probably still could have had it if that hadn't happened. It's okay. It's okay. Still not over it. It's okay. We're good. We're good. Oh my gosh, if that line comes out of his mouth. Rey, I am your father. If that line comes out of his mouth, I do not know what I will do. I cannot be held responsible for my actions if that happens. Just saying.